The NIU Mini is a 40% keyboard that you can buy from KBDFans. KBDFans is a kind of specialist custom keyboard supply shop. So I bought my NIU Mini and it was delivered in pretty good time once everything was ready. I think they were on pre-order when I ordered mine, so I had to wait a bit of a long time. When you get your order, make sure you check that everything is there. So I'm speaking from experience here. When my order arrived, I was 7 switches short, and I'd set aside some time to build this keyboard, so I was really annoyed with myself for not checking as soon as I got the package. So when I got my NIU Mini, it came with some extra resistors, 2 sets of stabilizers, which was nice, and extra screws as well for the case. Okay, so you should do this as soon as you get your board. Get keyboard tester up, plug your board in, check the LEDs are all lit up, and then check every single one of these switches. As I said before, the function buttons, they probably won't work. Well, no, they won't work. If you have 2 sets of tweezers, you can maybe press a function button and then something else, but you know, that's up to you. Test all of the switches anyway, just to make sure that everything does something. Even if it's not what you think it's supposed to do, you can see that, oh, that's backspace. That's because I've already set this up, because I had a lot of time on my hands. As I said, I was 7 switches short, so I had a lot of time to set up my layout as I wanted it, or as I think I want it. As I said, this is my first 40% keyboard, so I have no idea what I'm doing. But yeah, we'll talk about that in another video probably. So test all these switches and you should be good to go. Okay, so I've tested everything and it looks like my board is fully functioning. That's good, apart from the bit of a confusion with the layout. So let's get on to the next step and look at our switches. So I got cherry Silent Reds with mine because I wanted to try them out. And what makes these special is that they have a little bit of plastic at the top of the slider, which dampens the sound when the slider comes back up and hits the housing at the top. So if your switches have these 2 small legs on them, that means that you have PCB mounted switches, and that can be a little bit tricky to get in, but the good thing about them is that they lessen the chance that your switches will be kind of wonky when you finally get them into the PCB and you close up the board. So they're a blessing and a curse. What I usually do now is I try to get them in there. I used to cut them off because I felt like it was easier to put them in, and it is easier to put them in depending on the PCB. But what you might find at the end is, especially with universal plates, the switches may not be seated straight in the PCB, and that's how you end up with switches that look a little bit off, especially around your modifiers. With the NIU Mini, it's not so much of a problem because obviously the case only supports 1 layout, so everything should be okay. But I still am wary, so I'm going to leave a few legs in there at certain places around, but I'm going to clip off most of the legs on these switches so that I can just get them in easier, especially the ones towards the middle of the board. Not 100% necessary, but that's what I'm going to do for this board. If you have better cutters than mine, you'll actually be able to cut them a lot better. These are not great, but I have some new ones on my wish list. So turn them upside down, and it's the plastic legs either side of the big bump in the middle that you want to cut off. So you need to be careful when you cut these because they can go anywhere. And I am wearing eye protection, of course, but I just put my finger over the top of it to stop it from flying off and then get rid of it. And with poor quality flush cutters, you might be left with a little bit of leg left over. So, you know, if that bothers you, you can sand them off. I'm going to sand mine off. But if it doesn't bother you, you can just leave them. But make sure you get right down as close as you can to the main part of the housing. Otherwise, your switches won't be seated properly. Okay, so I'm going to have a fun hour or so doing this, and I'll see you when I'm done. So next we're going to talk about the stabilizers, and here I have some plate mount Cherry MX stabilizers. Now, I'm not sure if these are the genuine article or one of the millions and millions of knockoffs that are floating around everywhere, but this is what came with the kit, and I actually have about 2 boxes of plate mount stabilizers that I ordered kind of by mistake twice. And I've pre-clipped and pre-lubed these in the style of Anthony Oy. Now, if you're not subscribed to him, I recommend you go and do that, especially if you're new to building keyboards, any keyboard really. Go and subscribe to him. He does live streams and stuff, and he gives out some really good advice on what to do and what not to do when you're building. So I tried to take some of his advice about lubing stabilizers, so I'm not going to go into that in this video. Go and check out one of his VODs, subscribe to him on Twitch, and learn something. It's kind of overkill for the NIU Mini because it only has one set of stabilizers, so job done. Okay, so here is the top part of the case, and you can see that there are some scratches. I can live with those. There may be scratches from production or scratches when it's being packed, but the inside, this part of the case is never going to be seen because the acrylic is going to be covering that up completely, so I don't have any problem with that. The outside of the case is fantastic looking. I'm going to put the stabilizers in. I'm going to put the metal bar underneath these 2 teeth here, and then rest the top of it on the top of the case, and then pushing down on the back of it, they'll slot into place with a little bit of a tight fit, but that's good. So it's probably not worth it, but I'm going to do it anyway because I've never done it before and I want to try. And I'm going to put some plaster on either side. Okay, so now I'm going to take some of the switches that I left the legs on and put them into the PCB just around so that I can just have some kind of places that I'm sure are stable and they're going to hold the PCB in when I'm moving it around. So you can see that both of the legs are poking through, so I'm good on that score, but be really careful when you're pushing these in that you don't squash the leg against the PCB, because these legs, especially the soft one, are not very durable at all. So you have to be careful and make sure you can see both legs coming through the hole when you do this part. So I've given this one a good push on there, and you can see, I hope, that both of the small legs are through, both of the gold contacts are through the holes as well. And that's what you want for each of the switches that you're going to try and push through like this. And then on the top of the case, you want to make sure that there are no gaps between the switch and the plate. Make sure that the switch is completely down when you're pushing the PCB from the other side. All right, I'm going to keep doing this and then come back when I'm done. Okay, so I've put a few switches in, and it was actually not that bad. I like the added security of doing it like this, to be honest with you. And the switches went in nicely because everything's lined up exactly as it should be. So I'm going to put the rest of the switches in, which should be much easier, and then we can start soldering. Okay, so I've got just about halfway through soldering these. I've gone with the one leg method, kind of channeling Wodan here. Another guy you should be subscribed to if you want to get good tips about building. Not necessary for this board, I don't think, since they're all one unit spaces on the plate. But it's a good habit to get into because sometimes the switch can fall out, and if you've already soldered both the legs on, it's very annoying to have to go back and try and fix it when both legs are soldered into the PCB. So I'm just going to solder one leg of each switch, and then I'm going to turn the board over and see if anything is not where it's supposed to be. So taking a look at the switches now, I'm going to just put them up to my eye level and see if I've got any that are obviously jumping out of the switch holes. Everything looks good because the switches fit really nicely into the top plate. So everything looks good here. Why did he miss those ones out? Because he's an idiot. Wow, are we finished? I just got one of these soldering reel things, and yeah, it's really good. I don't know why I didn't buy one before. I think I had it on my wish list for about 4 years, but I kind of kept putting it off. But yeah, this is really useful, very useful. If you don't have one of these, or one of those fancy 3D printed ones, well, I guess this is the fancy one, but the 3D printed ones look cooler. But this does the job. It's nice and heavy so it doesn't drag around. It's got a rubber base. So let's plug it in, and then we will test the switches one more time. And since you've already seen that, I'll cut here and I'll come back to tell you that everything is well. And I'm pleased to report that everything is fine. Did have one little scare in that one of the LEDs on this one here, I think when I was soldering this switch contact, I must have bumped it or something, because it was kind of riding up a little bit. So it meant that all the other LEDs were blue and this one was green, and it was also affecting this one somehow. But I just reflowed the solder and pressed down gently on it, and everything's okay now. So that was a little bit of a scare. That's what constitutes drama in the world of mechanical keyboards building. Yeah, so I'm going to get this back together, and then we can finish up. What do we do next? There's something missing. Let's get the keycaps on. So this is the first keyboard that I've built in quite a while, I think. What's the last one I built? It was probably the GH60 that I had with the Aristotles. So I've been out of the building game for a while. It's one of the main comments that people get when they show their hands, is the fact that they have, you know, hairy hands or long fingernails or dirty fingers, or yeah. I got hairies. Not as bad as some. Yeah, but I always scroll down. As soon as I see somebody with slightly long fingernails, I always scroll down to the comments and see how many people have commented on their fingernails and told them to get their nails cut, or to tell them that, just in case they didn't know, that they have hairy hands. Okay, so there we are. It's done. It's done. And obviously you recognize that this is supposed to be like a Pokeball from the Pokemon games. So I've had this idea in my head for so long, and I couldn't get the keycaps because they were just so expensive from Signature Plastics to have them in the correct colors. I would have liked this to be a bit darker, but well, there it is. I put the included black rubber feet on it. Yeah, they're okay. I would like them if they were white, but I don't know if they do white feet like this, or clear. Anyway, it's changeable. But yeah, this is good. This is good. So when you elevate it a little bit, you get a bit of underglow on the front as well, so it looks really nice. Yeah, this is a great little board. And it's super simple to build. It's really hard to mess this up. Even if you're me, it's hard to mess it up, because you got single units, you got one stabilizer, done. Maybe I'll talk a bit more about this board in the next video, but I hope you enjoyed that build, and I hope there'll be another one really soon.